Adam Dayem. I am an architect based in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm also a professor at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York. There was a story I had in mind about who the client would be. I live in Brooklyn and I teach in upstate New York. I am always back and forth in between those two places, and there are just a lot of really beautiful landscapes in between here and there. And I was interested in finding a site in between Brooklyn and in Troy, New York, to do a development. More specifically, the impetus for the design came out of things that were interesting to me and that I was working on in my teaching and my design studios and teaching at that time. One of them was just simply volumes within volumes. I was having my students create digital models that nested one volume within another volume as a way of starting to think about space. The other thing in my design studios was an interest in developing surfaces with texture on them. And then the third thing, which doesn't really come out of teaching, but it's just been a fascination of mine, ever since I could remember being interested in architecture, is objects in the landscape. And there's just something I think that's very powerful about an object that you can recognize as being designed, that's sitting out in a landscape and you get a view of it from a distance. I can't necessarily articulate why that's always been powerful to me, because it's something that I felt even before I began to study architecture. But that was something that I recognize, or I really see in these kind of agricultural buildings in upstate New York. There are barns and silos out in these fields that I'm really drawn to as these objects in the landscape. The site is 2 hours north of New York City. I spent a lot of time looking at land that would be able to kind of convey this sense of the object in the landscape. I happened upon the site just online and went to look at it, and immediately I felt like it was the right spot. I got the site that was open and had views of the surrounding mountains, but it was also happened to be kind of quirky enough to also be affordable for the project budget that I had. Initial idea was that I would build 3 houses and sell all of them. For the object within an object, that was interesting to me because it was a way of thinking about how you could distinguish different kinds of domestic spaces. Some spaces in a house could be larger scale and have maybe less residential feeling materials, but then other, like the living room, entry area, dining room, things like that. And then other spaces in the house could have a more intimate scale and softer materials. My idea was that the house was designed for art collectors who lived in the city. Like, that was the story that I had in my mind. So those spaces are conceived a bit more like an art gallery space. Concrete floors, high ceilings, and trying to avoid it like feeling like a domestic space. With the sleeve house, the idea is to keep the overall volume pretty simple. There's what I see as a relationship to the slope that it's sitting on. The house kind of leans in relationship to the slope, so there's a kind of, it doesn't just like sit straight up and down, right? There's some kind of response in the form of the house to the terrain that it sits on. The skin is this burned wood. It's a traditional Japanese technique of burning wood to basically preserve it. Like, once you burn the wood, it's highly resistant to weather and rot. The other thing that I was able to do with that 2-layer system is then let the outer layer go over the windows on the side of the house. And that was mainly, the idea was that, well, then the windows don't appear as they're not so prominent on the facade. And even from some angles, the window disappears. I suppose this is probably something that every architect learns on their first project, is how much are you willing to compromise for the sake of budget or constructability or time frame. I worked with an amazing contractor on this project who was essentially willing to do anything. I mean, he never looked at something and said, okay, we can't do that. But it's just a matter of like, well, how long is it going to take me and how much labor is involved and how much time do you really want me to be spending on this? As far as whether it's the project is my manifesto or not, I think that maybe at that point it was, in a way, my manifesto. But since then, I mean, we're always evolving. And so I think now, I would, if I was asked to do something similar, it would be, there are definitely themes that I would pick up on there, but there would also be, I've changed, I've evolved since then. There's one angle introduced in the X and the XY coordinate, one angle introduced in the XZ coordinate, and another angle introduced in the ZY coordinate. Like three, like the three spatial dimensions, and there's just one angle introduced in each one of those. For me, it's a way of questioning conventions. And I wouldn't say like I'm incredibly ideological person, and that kind of moves over into my architecture as well. I'm a lot more interested in working in a way that opens up new avenues of development. I don't think that I necessarily want to say that there's always a particular direction I'm going in, but it's important to me that every project that I do questions the nature of whatever program it is, right? So if I design a house, then it needs to question conventions of domestic architecture. I'm still interested in this idea of, not accepting the convention and creating spaces that are dynamic and to some extent destabilizing. The picture that we have of what domestic architecture should be is completely arbitrary, right? There's no reason like why a house should look like it does. I am interested in like what else could things be, I mean, I think we just like accept the status quo way too easily. I'm a lot more interested in the experiment and letting the way that we can think as architects open up new avenues. And, it's okay for me if we don't, or if I don't know exactly where I'm going, but all I know is I want to go somewhere else. But then, like a new generation comes on and, changes everything about that. And so I think that, as you study history, for me, it's more that, okay, well, the story changes and, how are we going to participate in that, the evolution of that story? I think that's what's most important to me. If we're not consciously resisting something, then the only alternative is that you've accepted the status quo. I think if you're not, there's no way to push the boundaries of what architecture or any creative practice could be unless you're resisting something, because otherwise you're just like regurgitating what's already been done. And I think it's important that, or at least the way that I work, I mean, I don't know, maybe some people are more intuitive, but like there has to be some level of like, okay, I'm resisting a convention here, or I want to make a house, but I don't want it to look like a house. The greater the constraints, the greater the pleasure. I think there's always space for resistance. For me, authorship is still important. I think that, as individuals, we want to express ourselves, and we want to experience the expression of other individuals. And so that's, while it is always a collaborative endeavor, I think that having a vision for what you want a project to be is important. And it's not that vision can't come out of discussions or collaborations that you have with other people, but there's a kind of focus that gets lost if things are designed by committee. And it's important that we keep a level of focus and sharpness. An architectural project is not, in any creative endeavor, it can't be everything to everybody. Some people are going to like it, some people are going to hate it. That's like the goal is not to make something that everybody is so watered down that everybody's okay with it. And if everybody likes your project, then you didn't really try anything new. I guess I just can't stand the acceptance of convention. Like I have absolutely no interest in reproducing something that's already been done before. I just think that for me, it's always an interest in a progression and what could be next. Well, spaces that are only designed around function would be really bland, and if you're just designing for efficiency, that's uninteresting. Koolhaas's early villas are really incredible to me as houses that also just are like I see those as they work as houses, but they're also completely undomestic. And the villa in Paris with the pool on the top, to me, that's like has always been a touchstone in terms of like how you use the language of domestic architecture, but twist it in a way so that like it feels alien, it feels destabilizing. Um, and then the Bordeaux Villa is another project that I really love. It's built around the experience of a person in a wheelchair, but produces a completely different kind of domestic landscape because of that constraint. I guess I wouldn't want to necessarily even be able to describe what I want to achieve in a series of a couple sentences. I'm just sort of even realizing this as you're asking the question, but I feel a little allergic to that. That say, okay, well, here's what I want to do. Because I don't know. I think that part of what I'm most interested in is the uncertainty of the discovery. Honestly, it's just the discovery, the process of discovery as you move through a project that I find to be the most engaging thing. And we work through this visual language that's we inherit from down from the Renaissance, right? And now we have all kinds of new representational tools that allow us to visualize things. But for me, architecture is really a lot about how we use those tools and how we create new. I don't know. It's too much to say we create new languages within those tools, but we make new discoveries.